Ahead on primetime, the island records its 138th COVID-related casualty, a 54-year-old man. Plus, over 40 pounds of meth and 7 pounds of marijuana is seized by federal agents from multiple packages mailed to Guam. And today, during a virtual meeting, the Guam Visitors Bureau, Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, and the Guam Chamber discussed the very latest on the reopening of tourism.
Hafaday, good evening. Guahusi Isaiah Uggan, and thanks for tuning in. We begin tonight's newscast with confirmation of the island's 138th COVID-19 related fatality. According to the Joint Information Center, the patient, a 54-year-old male, passed away at the Guam Regional Medical City at approximately 11:17 a.m. Wednesday. The man had underlying health conditions and was admitted to GRMC on April 29th and tested positive upon admission. Governor Luliang Guerrero saying, quote, "Our island mourns another loss to this deadly virus. To those who knew him, Jeff, Josh, and I offer our deepest condolences and sympathies. May you find comfort in the outpouring of love and support from those around you." She adds, "Though we grieve, we must not grieve as others with no hope. We have the tools to prevent any more loss of life and call upon the community to do what is necessary to prevent any more days of sadness," quote, end quote. The JIC also reported that 12 new cases of COVID-19 were identified out of 508 tests performed Tuesday, May 4th. Of the new cases, 4 were identified through contact tracing. To date, there have been a total of 8,016 officially reported cases, with 99 cases in active isolation and 7,779 not in isolation. The CAR score is at 1.1. Over 20 search warrants were filed in the District Court of Guam this week. The warrants were executed by United States Postal Inspectors on several packages in which roughly 40 pounds of meth and 7 pounds of marijuana were seized. According to court documents, the separate investigations occurred from November 2020 to April 2021. The packages were mailed into Guam from the mainland and addressed to multiple recipients on the island. Other items were sent along with the drugs to include protein powders, clothing items, Hallmark cards, food items, and dog food treats. One package also contained THC vape oils. Another attorney has been removed from representing murder defendant Joyner Sked. Defense counsel Gloria Rudolph filed an expurgate motion requesting to withdraw from the case. Rudolph stated she has a similarly serious case that also involves a defendant facing life in prison and is unable to provide adequate representation at the same time for both cases. Rudolph informing the court that Sked's case will be very time-consuming as there are hundreds of pages of discovery, which she argues will be unreasonable financial burden. The government did not object to the motion and the court granted the withdrawal. Sked, along with co-defendant Rudy Kanata, is accused for the brutal beating and death of former Umatic Mayor Daniel Sanchez. The court appointed attorney William Pohl to the case and continued Sked's arraignment hearing to Friday, May 14th. Former UFC fighter John Tuck's trial has been moved up a couple of days, with jury selection to begin on Monday, May 10th. Tuck faces rape charges for allegedly sexually assaulting a woman in a parking lot in Tamuning last year. As stated in court this morning, both parties' cases and chiefs are not expected to exceed 1 week. The government anticipates roughly 3 days of presenting evidence and witness testimony. Additionally, the government informed the court that the victim is scheduled to arrive on island on Sunday, May 9th. And have been cleared from quarantine by public health. Superior Court Judge Elise Ariarty declares a mistrial in Jeremy Jerome Borja's criminal sexual conduct case. This comes after a hung jury. Borja faces second-degree criminal sexual conduct as a first-degree felony for sexually assaulting a teenage girl known to him. His trial began on April 29th and was only 3 hours long, in which all of this week the jury was in deliberations for 4 days. Jurors were dismissed yesterday after they were unable to return a unanimous verdict. A new trial date was set for May 27 unless a plea offer is accepted prior to then. Write-up drug testing is underway at the Guam Police Department. Chief of Police Steve Ignacio hasn't received any results yet, but GPD has a zero-tolerance drug policy, which would mean if any officer pops positive, then they could be forced to turn in their badge.
But again, that's just working on what we see. But again, depending on what they test positive for. I mean, if they test positive for ice or marijuana, then that's a different story, as opposed to maybe if they test positive for maybe a prescribed painkiller, right? And they do have a doctor's prescription for that. That's a very different set of circumstances.
Do you guys?
The chief, however, says there are reporting requirements if an officer is on prescribed medications. GPD is looking to test at least 75% of the force. Plans are underway by the Department of Corrections to reverse the nonviolent confinement policy. It was the midst of the pandemic when DOC was experiencing an outbreak at the prison that the director, Joseph Carbolito, enforced the policy to only accept violent offenders. Nonviolent offenders were booked and released, in which DOC spokesperson Anton Uggins says there were roughly 10 arrestees that were refused and did not enter the facility.
We're just concerned about the lower level. I mean, again, crime is crime, but we had some being committed for defective tail lights. I mean, those are the kinds of things we're worried about. Theft of property. I mean, yes, those are crimes, but in a time when we're trying to make bed space for isolating and quarantining these inmates as they come in, we don't have a lot of bed space. So those are the main ones we were concerned about. Of course, that's a lot of that has slowed down now.
Uggins says the director had a conversation with Guam Police Department management and they are working on revising the memo. The Guam Visitors Bureau presented the latest update on the tourism reopening and has been the consensus it will be a long, slow climb back. GVB Vice President Jerry Perez addressed a joint virtual meeting with the Chamber and GHRA. He says the estimated global loss is $1.3 trillion, more than 10 times the loss suffered during the 2008 global recession. A full recovery of global tourism is not expected until at least 2024. Meanwhile, GVB is projecting a mere 82,000 arrivals this fiscal year, just 5% of the pre-COVID level. One bright spot might be vaccination tourism. Paris says GVB has received many inquiries from U.S. citizens in nearby foreign countries about getting vaccinated here.
I believe President Carl has already sent a note to the governor requesting an allocation of 1,500 vaccines for us to test out this program in order to see if it really would work for us. And the benefit of this basically is that it would help jumpstart a tourism value chain that is in atrophy from more than a year shutdown.
Paris says it will first be a proof of concept to determine the actual demand. He said vaccine tourism was not pushed earlier because the priority was on getting local residents vaccinated first. Physicians Advisory Group Chair Dr. Hoa Nguyen gives his 2 cents on the Guam Visitors Bureau idea of making Guam a vaccination destination.
I would support that for them to open a program for the U.S. citizen that lives abroad, the expat to come to Guam, because that's the closest point to get vaccinated.
Nguyen says that many COVID vaccines are still not available for many expats living in Japan, the Philippines, and Thailand, and he reassures that Guam has a large amount available. The Department of Administration has begun its second cycle of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program of accepting tenant pre-applications. The ERA program provides relief to renters to pay for rental and utility arrears as a result of the COVID pandemic. During the first cycle of the program, 2,600 applicants received with an estimated 350 deemed ineligible.
I think that the biggest issue we've really come across is a lot of these arrangements are not formal arrangements. A lot of these landlord-tenant arrangements are informal arrangements, but we're trying to have to match that with federal standards, and that's proven to be a little bit problematic, and we're allowing the parties to go back and formalize the arrangement so that they can qualify.
For those that were deemed ineligible under the first cycle, they have 20 days to appeal their case. For new applicants under Cycle 2, the last day to file for the ERA program is May 21st. For more details, email era@doa.guam.gov or call 638-4518 or 4519, weekdays between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Funding for the Paycheck Protection Program has finally run out. The Small Business Administration issued a statement today saying after more than a year of operation and serving more than 8 million small businesses, funding for the bipartisan Paycheck Protection Program has been exhausted. According to the latest SBA statistics, a total of 1,310 loans were approved for Guam businesses, totaling a little over $100 million. The SBA will continue funding outstanding approved PPP applications, but any new qualifying applications will only be funded through community financial institutions, which are financial lenders who serve underserved communities. They got the emergency order to move ahead in December, but 5 months later, and still no results. Sabrina Salas-Matanani reports on the latest with the government's effort to purchase a brand new financial management system.
Prompted by an executive order signed by the governor in December, but it's been a problem for the government even years before the COVID pandemic spread through the territory. We're talking about the movement to buy a new GovGuam financial management system authorized by the governor under emergency procurement 5 months ago. Tasked with leading the procurement of a new FMS is DOA Director Edward Byrne. The process, however, has come under legislative scrutiny, with senators concerned that we may be bypassing regular procurement laws to deal with the pre-existing problem and paying for it with federal relief money. According to Byrne, however, the federal monies that Guam has been receiving to combat COVID has tripled the government's transactions, further burdening the current system.
We certainly don't want to. We don't want to lose control. So that's what made it an emergency, is that a system designed for, say, what amounts to 1 billion is now having to deal with 3 billion. And it's just not working. And it requires a lot of manual effort and intensive people intervention to make it work. We're not trying to get around any procurement regulations.
Byrne says they are going through an RFQ process and is receiving guidance from the AG's office. DOA is hoping to acquire a new financial management system before the end of the fiscal year in September. It's not clear just how much a new system will cost, but they have set aside at least $8 million in American Rescue Plan funds. GovGuam's current financial management system is almost 20 years old. Additionally, although procurement is usually handled by GSA, the governor in